As far as we know, although von Neumann works both in the theory of quantum and the theory of computation, he never thought of combining them, as far as we know. When did that happen? That happened, let me fast forward to the year 1961. 1961 for the first time. There was a paper written by Rolf Landauer, with the title Irreversibility and Heat Generation in Computing. Irreversibility and heat generation in computing. For the first time, we're on a new timeline. A new timeline that's combining both physics and computation, thinking about the physics of computation itself. Okay? So the computing process, and we're talking about irreversibility and heat generation. Where have we seen that before? We have seen that in Carnot with his reversible processes leading to the maximally efficient possible heat engines. We've also seen it in Maxwell's demon, connecting information, heat, and entropy. And what he showed in this landmark paper was a few things, but what I want you to think about is an operation like AND, which I can think about the product of the two input bits. If I just tell you what the output of AND is, let's suppose the output of AND in this particular case was false. Can you tell me what the two bits of input were?
Well, if they were both false, I mean, like, you wouldn't know, because it could be either.
Exactly. It could be that they were both false. It could be that one was false and one was true, or vice versa. So it's not possible to reverse that. This is an irreversible process. What Landauer showed was an extremely interesting thing, that when you do this, you increase the entropy of the system. You're sort of forgetting information if you're throwing it away. And that necessarily entails that you generate heat. Okay? So it's not heat due to your laptop not being efficient or your battery heating up. It's heat due to physics, this connection between information, heat, and entropy. Extremely interesting thing. So is there any way to fix this? Does computation have to be irreversible? We love the AND gate, right? The AND gate is everywhere. Do you think you could build a computer without the AND gate that's capable of doing what a computer with the AND gate could?
You would use a NAND.
NAND, but NAND is still going to be irreversible. So it's a good guess, but we'll still have this. Is it possible to build a completely reversible computer? The answer is yes, and the first person to answer that was Charlie Bennett in the year 1973 in his paper, Logical Reversibility of Computation. So we're going to see in the course how it's possible to make the AND gate reversible. And it's a very simple trick. Essentially, you just keep around the input bits. And then I know what the input bits were, so I can go back to that. It's almost a trivial thing, but it has really important implications for both classical computing as well as quantum computing, which we're going to do. So this is a precursor to quantum computing because, as we'll cover and you may know, quantum mechanics is completely symmetric in time. In other words, it's completely reversible. Okay, so you can evolve a system forward, you can also evolve it backward. With one famous exception being measurement in quantum mechanics. That's still up for debate. You'll get different answers from different people. But after this, we had sort of reversible classical computing. In 1980, for the first time, there was the first paper on quantum computing by Paul Benioff. The title of which is The Computer as a Physical System. The Computer as a Physical System. This was the first, with an asterisk that we're going to mention in a second, first paper on quantum computing, sort of defining the idea of quantum computing. But as you know, ideas are sort of in the air and spread between different people. In 1982, physicist Richard Feynman wrote another famous paper, Simulating Physics with Computers, in which he also sort of asked for and defined, he wanted a quantum computer in order to simulate certain processes in physics better. And then the following year, this is where our asterisk comes in. So in 1983, Stephen Wiesner wrote a paper, or I should say the paper was published rather, called Conjugate Coding. Conjugate coding. So this doesn't have quantum in the name, doesn't have a quantum computer in the title. But what it did was essentially found all of quantum information science. And the caveat is that this was introduced, he actually first wrote it in the year 1969. Okay. It's a very interesting historical fact that even before Bennett did the logical reversibility of computation, all of the main ideas for this paper, for quantum information science, were in this paper. As you can imagine, it was a little bit too advanced for its time and sort of never got published. It didn't get published until 1983, but all the ideas were there. And when Charlie Bennett and others talk about their contributions, they're always very clear to acknowledge the contributions of Wiesner. Okay, a few more things until I get to the punchline and all the things that we're going to cover in the course. 1984. Bennett again, and another name, Broussard, which I'll just write as BB, they introduced for the first time quantum cryptography. That is how to securely send information between two parties, now using the laws of quantum mechanics. We're going to see how that works. It's in the textbook in the course. So we appropriately call this protocol that they introduced BB84 for the initials of the authors and the year that it was introduced. Now I'm going to jump you ahead to the next year, 1985. The hits sort of keep on coming at this point, as you can see. In 1985, we got the quantum model of the Turing machine for the first time. So this was due to the physicist David Deutsch. And we had the Turing machine quantized. So from the quantization of first energy, then to light, then to mechanics, now computation itself is formally quantized. It was in the previous papers as well, but here's a formal model, computational model of what it means to be a quantum computer. We're not going to discuss this too much in the course. We're going to use the quantum circuit model because it's equivalent and much easier to understand. But in the history, it's good to know when this happened. After this was defined, people started thinking not just about the model of the computer, but what you could do with it. Meaning the first quantum algorithms. And the first one ever was in 1992, also due to David Deutsch. And this is where the timeline gets a little funny, because we just call the algorithms the names of the people who invented them. Okay, so this would be Deutsch's algorithm, often called the Deutsch-Jozsa algorithm. And if we have time, which I think we will, when do we stop? 2:40?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to give you a preview of this so you can actually see what a quantum algorithm looks like. We're not going to fully understand it today, first day, but we'll sort of get the vocabulary and the notation, and you'll kind of see what we're getting at in this course. So the very first one, does anyone know any other quantum algorithms, though? Perhaps the famous quantum algorithm?
Sure.
Shor's algorithm. Okay. Shor's algorithm is going to be in 1994/5. I'll write it in 1995. But what I want to emphasize to you is there's a direct sequence, a direct line of thinking from the Deutsch-Jozsa algorithm to Shor's algorithm. Okay? And you can see that both in the thinking but also in the history. So in the next year, 1993, there was another algorithm by Bernstein and Vazirani, BV, which again, we just call the Bernstein-Vazirani algorithm. The next year in 1994, So the Bernstein-Vazirani algorithm built on the Deutsch's algorithm or the Deutsch-Jose algorithm. In 1994, Simon built on this, and again, Simon's algorithm. And this was very close to Shor's algorithm. It's sort of a direct inspiration. We'll see this in the course. Peter Shor was on a committee who reviewed this paper, and as far as I know, understand the history, sort of got very interested in it then, and then did his work to develop in 94/95 the famous Shor's algorithm. What does Shor's algorithm do? It factors a number into its prime factors. Okay, so it's a mathematical problem. It's sort of a complete accident that we care about this at all. We care about it because it's used in the most common cryptography, so as you can imagine, if we're all protecting our information, depending on the hardness of factoring prime numbers. If someone invents a quantum algorithm for factoring prime numbers, it's going to generate a lot of interest, which it of course did. So we'll cover Shor's algorithm in this course. And the very last thing, I'll fast forward you to 2019. In 2019, Google demonstrated for the first time what we call quantum advantage. So whereas Shor's algorithm is sort of a mathematical demonstration, meaning that it's a prescription of an algorithm that if we had a large enough quantum computer, we would be able to run this. And as far as we know, no classical computer would be able to do this. What quantum advantage means is it's actually an experimental demonstration. So the first time this ever happened in history was in 2019. And it's a moving target, as you can imagine, because quantum computers are going to get better, but also classical computers and classical algorithms are going to get better. So it's actually since been refuted, but there's been other experiments that still have demonstrated quantum advantage as far as we know today. So this is your timeline of computation and physics from the abacus, which I didn't write down, in the year 2500 BC to the first demonstration of quantum advantage in 2019.